we can get started by, we'll have each of us introduce ourselves, and
Sure.
You could say your name and preferred pronouns if you like, as well as what you do for the college, how long you've been here. That would be great.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And then I will go and I'll give a little bit of just brief context, like I do for why we're holding these conversations. But please,
sure.
Go ahead.
Cool. Well, hello everyone. My name is Lara Jane Keh, but don't call me Lara Jane. My mother will just call me Lara Jane, or my childhood friends will call me Lara Jane. I go by LJ at the college, and for my wonderful student athletes, I'm Coach LJ. So I've been at Bowdoin here for 4 years. I'm the head women's track and field coach and assistant cross country and men's track and field coach. This year has been a really exciting and stressful and wonderful and a whole host of feelings kind of year. So I've taken on a couple of different roles now on campus outside of my coaching position. So I am, it's all within athletics. I'm in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee within the athletic department. And I'm also the Athletes of Color Coalition, one of their 2 coaching liaisons. And just having these conversations about identity, about race, but also not just race, but just all of our identities as people. And that has been a huge growing experience for me because I am using my voice more than I have ever, and it's been awesome. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you for having me.
And I apologize. Did you mention your preferred pronouns?
My preferred pronouns are she, her, hers. Sorry, guys.
No problem. And I'm Roland Mendiola. I use he, him, his pronouns. I work as a clinical psychologist on staff, as well as the interim director at Counseling and Wellness Services. And just a little brief context as to why we're holding these mental health conversations. I think over time, we've just been increasingly interested in how to create a more open and caring community when it comes to both mental, emotional health issues, as well as specifically how to care for who people are individually, where they're coming from, the identities that they hold. So we wanted to specifically target these conversations at an exploration of culture and identity and mental health, and particularly the kind of cultural or social stigmas that we can carry when it comes to mental health and how that intersects with culture and identity. So thanks again, LJ, for being willing to do this and
yeah,
some time. I'm really psyched for you to be here. So with that, first question will be, did you grow up, LJ, talking about mental emotional health? And if so, how? And if not, why?
Yeah, ooh, that's a big question, and happy to talk about it. So just a little background about me, which kind of adds a little bit more color to a little bit of the answer / my story. So I am Filipino. I immigrated here when I was 3 and was raised in a Filipino family household. Traditionally, culturally, with a fusion of the American culture. So I don't really think I did talk about like emotion and mental health. I didn't even really know what mental health was or what that kind of topic was when I was a kid. Whether that's a Filipino culture, and that's me generalizing it, but specifically it felt for me that I had to just be strong. I had to be strong and suck it up, and that I can do it. And adversity was a good thing. And to really show very little weakness, which was tough. You know, I'm the only child. My parents divorced at a young age. And so there was a lot of emotional things going on as a kid, but I didn't really have that space to say, I'm not okay. This sucks. I just had to say, I'm going to be fine eventually. Like whether I said that to myself. So yeah, I think as an adult now, as I go through therapy, and I've been going to therapy regularly, for the past 3 years, I've started to unpack a lot of the lack of emotional awareness when I was a kid. But I also look back and say that I was a pretty resilient kid. But resiliency, but also not like an awareness that, it's okay to not be okay. That's kind of a big thing. I didn't know that not being okay was an okay thing. I felt like I had to always just be strong, as a kid, and not complain. I think that was a big thing too, culturally, in our household. It's not to complain, that I should be really grateful that we immigrated here in America, and that, just be grateful, and don't complain. So yeah, it's a big, heavy answer to that question, but I'm here to talk about it all.
Yeah. I feel like yes and no, like heavy. And I'm here to welcome any and all of it, and so much of that resonates. I didn't know to whatever extent it feels useful for us to talk about, but as you know, I was overjoyed to meet you and find out there was another Filipino on the campus, and but particularly when you're talking about it now, a couple different things, I guess. Do you find it in some ways like ironic for me personally, having two parents immigrate from the Philippines shortly before I was born? I have a strong sense of Filipino culture being a lot about actual like emotional expressiveness, and at the same time, like obviously, as you're saying, that there are things emotionally you're not supposed to talk about, or you're not supposed to show. So
Yeah.
do you find that, I don't know, in some ways ironic or confusing, or?
Both ironic and confusing. I mean, I think, Filipinos really love to celebrate joy and happiness. Like I do recall, like when it came to birthdays and Christmas, because that's the holiday that we celebrate during this time, and New Year's, like we were just a colorful, animated group of Filipinos. But then on the flip side, when it comes to heavy things, things of sadness and conflict, all of a sudden it's closed off, and we don't talk about it. So yeah, a little ironic.
I'm curious, as in your experience of it being born there, and then I feel like from our conversations having a strong connection to your culture. How do you make sense of that the heaviness is not acknowledged?
Wow. I don't think I ever really questioned it until like probably the last 5 years of my of being an adult. I can pretend that I'm an adult, but because I think at the time as a kid, it was just like an acceptance of like, that's just the way it was. Like, don't question the system. I also could not question my mother. So I think it was a little bit of just like, don't accept it and don't question it.
That's the way of thinking, right?
Yeah. And don't. Yeah. And then don't poke the bear. I think, as for me, I'm a little bit of the black sheep of the family. I'm super loud. And I mean, my athletes who watch this can be like, yeah, Coach LJ is loud. But like, I will say what I believe and what I think. And I think that kind of gets my family a little like, whoa, she just said that. And I think that's because I was raised in America for most of my life, because I came here when I was 3. So yeah, I think it's just like a cultural acceptance and a cultural norm that no one has really questioned.
Yeah, that feels right. Like an unquestioning, like you said, gratefulness, as well as a not complaining about things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not complaining. That was a big thing.
Which is hard. I will say both, as a provider of mental health care, and then I'm an active consumer for years now, at least gosh, probably going on like 15 years. That I think how my parents and a lot of folks in the community would understand therapy would be like complaining, like that, that it's a form of, it's an outlet for complaining.
Yeah. My mom didn't, when I shared with my mom that I was going to therapy, she was a little taken aback and was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I was like, I'm just really anxious a lot and at moments feeling a little depressed. And, I could like hear it, but not, obviously the silence was like the judgment and like, "What's wrong with you?" And she's like, at first she was like, don't tell the family that you're going to therapy. Because I think for my family, therapy at first, or maybe still is, I'm not sure, it was viewed as weakness, but then I told my mom, I was like, how many times did I have to go to a doctor? Because, my hamstring or my knees or my heart, I had, and we go see the doctor to see all these things and make sure that we take care of our physical bodies. I'm doing the same exact thing in going to therapy, just taking care of what's in between my ears and like my heart. And I think by telling her that, she kind of got it, but she's kind of just like, "All right, Lara Jane, just do you just," but not really giving me a space to say, "Tell me about it. I want to hear what's going on." It's just more like, okay, you're doing that thing. Keep doing it. But I don't really want to hear too much about it.
Yeah. So what would you say now, LJ, about sort of your current relationship to mental and emotional well-being? What your current perspective is.
Yeah. Well, I have been coaching full-time for 6 years now. And when I first started coaching, I thought this was like, the rainbows and butterflies of coaching the sport. And I realized very quickly how exhausted I was, not physically, but just like emotionally and mentally. And I realized that there were so many times where I was putting everyone before me. All my athletes, my fellow coaches, when I was in grad school, all of my professors and my classmates, I was putting everyone before me. And I didn't realize that I was doing that until all of a sudden, like, I hit a wall and I was like, I'm anxious all the time. I'm feeling really depressed. I'm feeling blue, down. And then I started going to counseling at grad school, which was the first like introduction to counseling. And I was like, wow, this is great. I love talking, and I have this space where someone is ready to listen to me. I think I really dove in. So yeah.
Can I ask real quick? Sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
Was it as kind of as simple as that? Like, oh wow, I'm anxious all the time. I'm depressed. Oh, here's counseling. I'll just go. Was it just that straightforward?
Almost. I was like in our grad lab. I went to Smith College for undergrad, and we have this grad lab where all the graduate students have their own computer. And I just kind of sat there and I was just like staring at the screen. And I'm pretty animated usually in that space. And one of my classmates noticed how quiet I've been for the past week. And she was like, "What's up?" And then I was like, "I'm just not feeling myself." And she's like, "Yeah, we can kind of tell even in the classroom." And she's like, "Do you know that like we have counseling services at Smith?" And I was like, "Oh yeah. I knew that. Like that, I told like our athletes to go there." And she's like, "Well, why don't you go there?" And then it was like, bam, holy crap. Why am I not going there? Kind of like, so Aaron, one of my classmates, shout out to you for really just kind of turning that light bulb on. And then I immediately, it was just right across the campus. So I actually walked myself over there and I was like, I wanted to start counseling. It was just like, and then the secretary kind of looked at me like, okay. I was like, I don't know what to do. So what do I have to do? So yeah, it was pretty instantaneous when someone from the outside said, "Hey, yeah, I'm noticing exactly how you're feeling."
Yeah. Right.
So.
Okay. You were maybe going to continue on after that before I get there.
No, yeah.
The question of, well, I mean, typically what I'm asking for folks, their current perspective on mental emotional health,
Yes.
sort of the journey, how they got to where they are now with it, because it's usually pretty drastically different from, when they started.
Yeah. So going back to grad school, when I realized that like I was putting everyone before me, and then going into therapy, I realized, wow, in order to take care of everyone else that relies on my feedback and my leadership and my mentorship, I have to really put myself first. And that was a hard thing for me to kind of swallow, because I looked at self-care as selfishness. And I think that's how we all feel at first. Like self-care is like, oh, I'm focusing on myself. Like I'm feeling so selfish. And I shared that with my therapist at grad school, and she helped me understand that like, no, it's not selfishness. It's actually selflessness, because you're taking care of yourself to allow yourself to be available emotionally and mentally for all your loved ones and the people that you care about. And then that kind of was like, jokingly, like the sales pitch, or like just kind of that phrase that really sunk in. And, my athletes know all the time, I preach this, like self-care is what is going to make our team a winning team. Prioritizing ourselves, because if we don't put ourselves first, we can't be the best teammates, we can't be the best friends, community members. So that kind of has stuck with me throughout my journey of going to therapy and mental health.
Beautiful. So if you would give me Coach LJ's definition of self-care.
Ooh, Roland, these are good questions. Self-care. I think the thing about self-care, and again, this is a very like roundabout definition, is that it doesn't necessarily need to be a big, grand thing. It's investing in yourself every single day. And it could be 5 minutes of like intentions in the morning, or 5 minutes at night when you list what you're grateful for, or you do a walking meditation when you're just walking from one building to the next on campus, or you're listening to like Headspace, like the app. But also like going to Starbucks because you want a creme brulee latte. Like if that's what's going to feed your soul and make you feel good, then that's what it is. So it's whatever. I think self-care is whatever you need for that day to feed your soul. And so it's defined in I think every day is different. Like for me, before our Zoom call, like I stretched and I did some intentional deep breathing, and I feel really good right now because I did that. And that only was 20 minutes out of my day.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you.
Sure.
What else would you say, LJ? You've touched on a bunch of things already in this vein, but how would you describe who you are, where you come from, what your identities are, how those things have shaped your approach and perspective on mental emotional health?
I think not really talking about mental health as a child and going into adolescence and even teenagehood, that's even a term, not really talking about it as much. I think it, in a way, has given me resiliency to handle a lot in my, like on my chest, like, because I almost feel like for the first half of my life, I just had to kind of stay strong and keep it all in. But it also has allowed me to be patient when I speak to others, especially with my athletes who don't really want to talk about how they're doing, but they do, but they don't know how to. So it's made me really be able to sit in silence and just, be patient to wait for them to reach out or for them to reply in my office when I ask them how they're doing, and they're just sitting there and they're like, and I just would say to them, it's okay. You don't need to have the words. You can just sit here and think. Because I was definitely in that spot when I was their age of like, I don't know how to respond. I think my knee-jerk reaction is always like, I'm great, I'm good, how are you? But now, when people ask me how I'm doing, I will be very honest. For the most part, I will say I'm pretty good. But then sometimes I'll say to people, I'm all right, day by day. Today's a tough one today, but tomorrow's a new day. And I really started to be honest with myself and honest with people around me. Because if we're trying to normalize conversations of mental health and not always being great or good when people ask you, then my hope is that we can serve others by answering honestly when people ask how you're doing. Because I know people say, hey, how you doing, as a greeting. And I'm like, I can't do that. Because I really want to know when I ask someone how they're doing. I just really want to sit there or stand there and just really like listen to their answer. So from childhood on, I think I definitely built a strong armor around me. And then as I've gotten older, I think that armor is kind of it's softer and hard at the same time. Like I'm able to be resilient, but then I'm also willing to receive help. I'm finally, as an adult, I think I've really embraced asking for help, even like as simple as directions, but more so if you get deeper into it, just saying like, I'm not okay, I need help. And being okay to say that and say, and understanding by asking for help, that is like such strength. That took me a long time for me to realize that asking for help is a strength in a person. So yeah.
Thank you. It brings up maybe two questions follow up. I think it can be a loaded thing kind of culturally, and I think I'm pretty out of the athletic game these days, but my perception of the athletic world also a loaded thing of like what it means to be strong. Would you speak on that somewhat, at least your personal experience perspective on for yourself, how you communicate to your athletes? Like, well, I can being strong.
Well, I can tell you what I thought was what strength was when I was 18 to 22 years old.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate to run for a Division I team, and that's a little bit more intense, right? Scholarships and roster spots, it's a little bit more cutthroat. And so being strong was also like, for me, was like showing no weakness, like showing that you were just getting better and better and better, and you're faster and you're stronger than others. And, you know, it was a really competitive program. Yeah. And so I thought that was strength, you know. And then when I was feeling overwhelmed in some points in college, I kind of resorted back to my childhood self and being like, no, you're fine. You're fine. You're resilient. You're strong. Like, you know, be grateful that you're here. You got a scholarship, you know. So I kind of resorted back to like my 8-year-old self in those times when I was in college as a student athlete. Now I realize that was a speck of a definition of strength, right? Strength is this like all-encompassing definition. So now as a coach, I think strength is vulnerability, and that comes with like being your authentic self, the good, the bad, the ugly, the awesome. And I hope my team has seen all those different shades of myself. The big thing is in strength is also asking for help and asking specific help, you know, and having the strength to be like, I think I'm really going through some anxiety. I really need help to find the tools to handle this. That's strength for me. Strength is also the ability to help others and not just yourself. I think that's why I tell the team, you have to take care of yourself before you take care of others, because that's strength too. And then I would say the last thing, by being a strong athlete, this is, you know, in addition to the physical pieces of being strong, right? Faster, you jump far, you throw far, you run fast, you have crazy endurance, you know, those physical components. But I think the last piece of strength is saying, I'm not okay. And today I'm giving all that I can, and that is enough. And I think that's something that I've had to really tell my athletes as a whole group, individual conversations, it's like everything that you can give today, that is more than that is more than enough. And that should be totally okay with you, because you don't know the weight that you're carrying. Maybe you have 3 exams today. Maybe you're going through some stuff at home. So give your best today, and that is more than enough. So those are all different components of strength for me, at least in the mental component of strength. And it's funny because if I read that definition when I was 18 years old, I'd be like, no, that's not strength. That is weakness. You are not strong by all of that. And it's been a beautiful journey for me to realize that in the span of like 12 to 13, 14 years.
So I appreciate everything you're just saying, including that last part. I'd love to play that out for just a second.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were communicating this to, sometimes we do this in therapy, right? Your 18-year-old self, as you might some of these 18-year-olds you're working with now, and you get the reaction that you would. I mean, your 18-year-old self would basically say what to you? Be like,
honestly, WTF. Like, yeah. I don't even get that. Like I don't even know how to unpack all of what you just shared with me. Yeah.
If you were actually like imagining this interaction with yourself happening, and she said that, what would you say back?
Oh.
That she could hear, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I would ask her, what was like something that's a little bit tangible to understand. I would ask her, LJ, when was the last time you did something truly for yourself that had no consequences of your team, your friendships, your classwork? Like, when was the last time you did something for yourself? And I don't think I ever really did anything for myself. I think it was always on the behalf of something else.
So that would give her, that would give her pause.
That would. It's already given me pause. I'm like feeling like I'm 18 years old again, and I'm far from that age. But like, when was the last time you did something for yourself?
I'm hearing that question right now for myself. I'm like, yeah, it's a good gut check every now and then.
Yeah, it's funny because I sent out my last 2020 email to my team, and I had these like reflections of 2020, and it's like, what would you, I can't remember everything, all those questions, but I was like, what is one thing that you are going to change about, like, what is one small thing that you're going to do to make 2021 a great year?
Yeah.
And so it's maybe not really directly related to my 18-year-old self conversation, but I would just ask her, what have you done?
Right. No, I think that would start to move someone more to a better year for sure.
Mm-hmm.
No, I will fit this one other question that came up.
Sure.
Because even though like there are some obvious maybe answers that we would all have to this, I think it's still worth asking the question, even if it sounds basic.
Mm-hmm.
For you, LJ, why do you think it is so hard for any of us to ask for help?
I think, I spoke specifically about my Filipino culture and growing up, but also like us Americans, because I'm a Filipino American. I grew up most of my life here. Like, we are dream chasers. We are always trying to be better every single day, finding the next technology that's going to save the world, or, a higher speed internet, or, the coolest clothing. I'm not really sure. But, I think as a culture, we're always striving to be better and to advance ourselves and to do really good things. Again, I think our culture, and I can see a little bit of a shift. Maybe it's the people that I surround myself with, or the people that I start following on social media, or just like what's happening in the news. But like, I think the reason why we have a hard time asking for help is because we just want to be better for the world, and we're trying to be better for our community, and we're trying to be better for our families, and we're trying to be better for the sphere of influence. We're trying to trying to maximize our influence in our sphere. And I think, again, we're putting everyone else before us. So I think that's why it's hard to ask for help, because I think there are a lot of moments where we're wrapped up in the day-to-day and the hustle and the bustle and the constant striving to be better as a person, as a community, as a country, that we forget to keep it keep it simple, like KISS, keep it simple, silly, like to get back down to the basics of like our controllables. Our number one controllable is us. So let's go back down to that. But I think that's hard, because I think culturally in the United States and certain parts of the region of our country, and then also keep taking into account culturally, like our family dynamics, it's really hard for us to ask for help.
Thank you, Coach. That was all well said.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
What do you consider other elephants in the room? Like, there are a lot of elephants, maybe including mental health these days, but what do you consider other elephants in the room?
I think, I got three in mind, and I think it's specifically for me. I think being a woman is an elephant in the room in a space, like as a coach myself. When I go to track meets and I do a quick scan of how many female coaches are there in this space. And it's like, wow, it's like a gentleman's club at this track meet. There's a lot of guys here. And so there's that one identity. And then it's a woman of color, which is like, woof, especially in certain spaces that I'm in. I'm the only female coach of color at Bowdoin for now. And I'm very optimistic and hopeful for more. And I also am the only female coach of color in the NESCAC within our sport. So that's a space that I'm trying to like really take up a space and really use my voice. But that takes a little bit of time. Mm-hmm. But then I also think like an elephant in the room is money, social economic class, and how like our world is really materialized and people base others' success on what clothes you wear, what kind of car you have, the size of your house, the area you live in. I feel like, maybe that's not an elephant in the room to a certain degree for certain age groups. Maybe it's more of the clothing and the kind of shoes you wear, and how you can afford that. But, friends that have second homes, and I'm like, I just bought my first house. So I think, so it's being a female, being a woman of color, and social economic status and just money, it can be elephants in the room. And I really appreciate that question, because when you sent me that question early on, I was like, what are other elephants in the room? Because I think immediately mental health, but then I started to think about all of my different identities. Also, elephant in the room too right now is your political party. And again, we're gonna not talk about politics, but that's an elephant in the room depending on what space you're in. Also, religion. I've been saying happy holidays, even though I celebrate Christmas, because I think it's really important for me to celebrate, like to be really open about various holidays. Because like right now, everyone's really celebrating Christmas. All of the decorations are Christmas decorations. And so I feel like that can be an elephant in the room in certain spaces for those who don't celebrate Christmas. Yeah. Wow, where's my space to celebrate, Kwanzaa or Hanukkah, and again, forgive me for not knowing all the holidays that are celebrated in the month of December and January, but it's one of those things too. So those are a small list of other elephants in the room.
And anything you would say, LJ? There's so much we could talk about with any of these, right? But I guess an argument could be made, like maybe we're just not meant to talk about these things in certain ways. But yeah, I'm curious in your mind, like why so many different issues why are so many different issues so hard to talk about?
Because
like the ones you're mentioning.
I mean, again, this is just what I think is, I think we also are in a society, in a culture that hard conversations, people avoid them. You know, people don't, I'm a person that will lean and dive into hard conversations.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's get really uncomfortable and let's,
but very, very vocal and very expressive about that.
But I think it's hard for some people to talk about those hard things or to talk about the differences. Maybe that's why it's hard to bring up those elephants in the room, because, and then maybe sometimes, you know, for me as a coach, I've had to understand that I can't know everything. And maybe people don't want to bring it up because they lack full understanding of it. Yeah. But that's the whole point of growing and learning, is that you have to kind of go in humbly, not knowing everything.
Yeah, maybe I'll ask you it this way too. That all makes sense. And I want to ask you it this way. Because I'm never assuming, even for people who are willing to be expressive as their full self, like that it's easy. Mm-hmm. That I never find that it's like easy to do that. What makes you willing to do that, LJ, even when it's not easy? Like what's the incentive for you having hard conversations?
Great question, Roland. Because for me, I want to live the fullest life, and that sounds really cheesy. So sorry for the extra Parmesan cheese in this conversation.
You gotta go there sometime. I mean,
I know, right?
We gotta just be straight up cliche. But, cheesy.
I just want to continue to work on being the best version of myself. And I'm not okay to just be who I am. Like tomorrow, I want to be better. I don't know what that means, but I just want to be better for myself. And then therefore can really best serve everyone that's in my sphere of influence. So to be loud and to be animated, yes, it's uncomfortable. Like, yes, the initial gut is like, do I really want to like turn into a cheerleader coach right now and cheer on my athletes? And I said, and I would always say yes, because the end result is it gives our athletes or whoever we're around the space to also be themselves.
Right.
If I, so by me just kind of taking a deep breath and being like, let's go, LJ, like, let's just be you.
Yeah.
I've noticed how so many others I've given the space for others to be themselves as well. And it doesn't mean that they're loud and animated, but it just means like coach is being herself. If I want to just kind of sit on the bench and just be quiet, like she's going to respect that because she's respecting herself to be herself.
That's right.
So that's why, it's never, every time I'm about to speak up in a Zoom, I get nervous, but I was like, I'm going to continue to better myself today. And by doing that, I'm going to get a little uncomfortable, come out of my shell just a little bit more.
I love all that. And I love also, at least in my mind, how that complements like what you were saying about us as those of us who identify as Americans, and how we maybe on one hand want to do our best, be our best, serve others, our sphere of influence, and that there is incentive to like it should like that to include that what you're talking about in our efforts to be like our best and really serve at our best. We need to also have these, I would argue, maybe you would argue too, give our all to these also really hard conversations.
And the more and the thing is, like, I was a hurdler in college. I wasn't good at hurdling to begin with. I fell. I have lots of scars on my legs from learning. And the thing is, like, but I got better at it and I became efficient at it. And then I became really good at it. And I'm not saying that I want to be like the champion of hard conversations.
Yeah.
But the more you allow yourself to have honest conversations, knowing that you want to think about the impact as well as the intention, it's always gonna, like, you're always gonna come out of it so much more aware of who you are, and you're a better listener, you become a better communicator, and you are just a better server, not server, but you can give back to people
Right.
adequately. If you allow yourself to have these hard conversations. Not that I think every conversation I have is hard, but I also want to give that space, like keep that door open if someone wants to bring up something hard.
Yeah. Hearing that too.
And I try to do that all the time with my athletes. I mean, just give them that space, that there's always that space if you would like to talk about something a little bit harder.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Last piece for now, LJ, before we have to sign off. Anything from your personal experience, any messages that you want to convey to any students hearing us? Right?
Yeah.
Whatever that you think they might need to hear at a time like this.
Yeah. Two things, and it's kind of I'm a big mantra person. I have a couple that I live by. I try to live by every day, or they're kind of reminders for me to get back in line when I'm kind of straying side to side. Is attitude of gratitude. Having an attitude of gratitude. I love it. That rhymes. But when you have a lens on that has, even if it's the hardest experience or it's a tough moment, when you can take away even like a speck of gratitude from those experiences, you're better. You are a better version of yourself because of it. And for me, when you practice gratitude, joy just floods into your life. Like I've noticed that once I really started practicing gratitude, I found myself being more joyful than I have been maybe even 3 years ago. Whether that's gratitude journals, whether that's just like saying out loud, I am grateful that I have electricity. I have a warm roof over, warm house. It doesn't even have to be anything grand.
Yeah.
I go to bed and I share 3 things that I'm grateful for to my partner before we go to sleep. That's something. And I always say thank you to my team after I see them, after I, or I sign off in an email saying with gratitude, Coach LJ. And the last thing I would say is actions are contagious. So even if you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm really scared to do this because I've never done this before, think about it. If you're brave and courageous enough to do something, to take action, people are going to see it and people are going to want to emulate that or copy it. So actions are contagious. I met an artist where a decade ago, and he had a beautiful painting. And in the bottom, it said, actions are contagious, be a positive epidemic. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll take away that second half because we're in a pandemic right now. But it's true. Like actions are contagious. Be positive. Like be contagiously positive. I'm not saying to do it every day, but when you're in that capacity to be contagiously positive and have powerful influences in your sphere, do it. And I realize being a coach and being in a position of power, holy moly, is that a privilege for me to be in? So I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
It's just to be like, to spread that contagious positivity and that joy, and to continue to practice gratitude. So those are my 2 things that I would love to share with the Bowdoin community, and specifically for our wonderful polar bear students, are those 2 things.
Yes. I find too, LJ, that positive influence can look a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to be like some extroverted, kind of, it can be.
I agree. Yeah. I think, positive actions can just be a good listener. Like, people will notice if someone is a good listener. There's a lot of nonverbals.
They really do.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me as a more extroverted coach, maybe my positive, contagious self is a little bit more animated, but I also know that there are moments where I will spread it quietly. Whether that's like a text message just saying like, hey, how did that exam go? or like, you know, how's your dog?
The little things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I can't express enough joy and appreciation for you right now, LJ. Thank you so much for all of this, and so great getting to know you. And I look forward to more conversations.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I also think it's just been a gift to have another Filipino on campus to I don't have to say much and you understand. And I think I am very grateful for that. I feel like that has been a beautiful thing that has happened. I've met so many new people this semester at Bowdoin, and that is probably one of the number one things I'm grateful for this semester.
I've been thinking about that in recent weeks too. So thank you for saying that. I share the same thing for sure.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for viewing, everyone.
Have a beautiful break, okay? And
yeah,
we'll catch up again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Roland.
Yeah, and let me know if you need to follow up after this sometime. I'm good to field any questions.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, and I encourage folks out there, please contact LJ. You know, if you want to ask questions, probe more of the issues that she brought up, please reach out to her.
Yeah, happy to chat. Hopefully next semester, if it's a nice wintry walk around campus, I'm game.
There you go. All right. Have a good weekend.